All right. All right. Let me kind of take a peek at all the buttons here. It is Wednesday night. Remind myself, Wednesday night. It is 7 p.m. My name is Scott Weldon. I am the executive director of the South Carolina chapter of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. And this is South Carolina NORML's Cannabis Conversation. Click, banners, buttons. We're going to give this a couple of minutes as we usually do, see if we can get a couple of folks to join us here in the conversation, which I see we've got a couple of folks already coming in. Love it. Love it. While we're waiting for folks to enter the room, I will do as I always do and mention our little disclaimer that all of our meetings are an environment of education and awareness and are not an open market for the sale, purchase, or distribution of cannabis. We do not encourage or condone illegal behavior of any kind. Also, at this time, I do like to remind you folks, please follow us on social media. The little ticker shows our Instagram, but also we are post more on Facebook. Trying to keep up with our blog on our website, but mainly subscribe to our YouTube channel and join us there every week at 7 p.m. for the Cannabis Conversation. Don't forget that liking, sharing, and subscribing helps the algorithms, helps share our site. And I don't know so much about YouTube, but again, I was on Facebook trying to find a group that I'm a member of. It has the word cannabis in it. It would not pop up on searches. I had to actually go through a button that took me to my groups and then scroll through other groups to find it. Also, don't forget to visit our website and support our sponsors. Our sponsors and our members are pretty much what help keep us operational. That, and of course, our volunteers. Thank you for everybody that helps us by volunteering. But yes, visit our website, go to the sponsors page, and support our sponsors. Let me take a peek here. I see Jennifer's in the house. Says, hey. Hey, Jen, how are you today? Jennifer, good to see you. Glad you're here. Glad when folks join us. Click, buttons everywhere. As you can see, we do not, do not have VP on with us tonight. And I'm starting the conversation with a coughing fit. Thankfully, brought my water. There's a button I'm looking for. Turn that one off. All right. I'm going to pop up the little banner that says intro and agenda. And with the intro, I'm going to kind of, as I usually do, welcome everybody. Welcome for joining us. Not a lot of agenda tonight. If you've tried to join us or have joined us last week, or tried to join us the previous 2 weeks to that, you'll see we have been having some personnel difficulties, I guess we would call it. As all y'all know, our positions with South Carolina NORML are volunteer positions. So many of us have other obligations in our lives, day jobs, or for me, night job. And for me, over the past, where are we? I'm going to say about a month, started just before our 420 events. Had a teammate go down, was in the hospital, some medical issues he's recovering from, and just started back to work now a month later. And then we had another team member go on vacation. And then they came back and they still can't come to work because apparently while they were gone, they got the COVID. And so until they test negative with the COVID, they can't come back to work. So we were running our team, a 4-man team, down at 2. I was throwing a lot of extra hours in there to help cover shifts. 3 can cover the shifts pretty comfortably. 2, it's a bit of a scramble. And I'm a part-time worker. They don't really like to give us overtime, but guess what? They ended up, giving me a little bit of overtime in there. And I'm not a young man anymore, so it kind of beat me up a little bit. Came to the realization at work last night. I've got I was having some pain in my foot. And I've had this happen before. If you've ever had plantar fasciitis in your foot, it hurts, but it goes away. And, massage it, take care of it, but yeah, it hurts. So I'm limping around the house now. But I was working some double shifts over these past few weeks, and so just kind of really knocking my sleep patterns out of whack. And so because of all that, and I'm really not prepared with an agenda tonight. Not that I don't have something to talk about. You know me. Sometimes the mouth keeps moving even if the brain's not engaged. So we'll see how that works out for us tonight. All right. And also, as you can see, VP has kind of taken a step back, taken a breather, trying to what's the word I'm looking for? Regroup. And I believe what we've sort of discussed with VP, Wednesdays have become more of a challenge for her because of her job. There are times on Wednesdays, actually almost any time of the week, that her job may call her for an event that she's got to participate in or something. Family, her business. So she's got a lot going on. So I'm not sure when she'll be back on with us live. I have sort of tried to set her in motion with another, hopefully upcoming partner of ours to put together some pre-recorded segments that we can play during our cannabis conversation, and then we can discuss them as well. And now that I've seen that he's here, I've got to just say, Joey's here. Welcome, Joey. Glad to see you here with us tonight. Where was I? Oh, talking about VP. So I'm hoping this pans out. Many of you all know, especially our regular listeners, probably have a good understanding of some of the basics of cannabis, the different strains a little bit, mostly whether they're sativa dominant or whether it's sativa or indica or a hybrid, and what the dominancy of the hybrid might be. And we know terpenes play a role. I know a little bit about terpenes. I've taken a little course in them a couple years back. So anyway, I'm hoping that what they're going to be doing over the next few weeks is putting together some segments for us talking about terpenes. I don't know the details on it yet. My hope is they kind of have a somewhat modest segment we can play that talks about 2 or 3 of the different terps that are prominent, and then the following week 2 more, or something like that. And then that will sort of open up a little bit of discussion and or questions for us here on the conversation. I keep seeing that bright yellow tape gun behind me, and it's distracting. So there is that, and a couple of other things I do want to kind of bring up while I'm talking about agenda stuff. As I mentioned, been crazy busy with my work, so a lot of things I haven't been able to spend the time on making formal arrangements to do stuff, but we do have a couple of events coming up down the line. But I want to say it's Friday. Friday, actually, I am involved in whether it's a Zoom meeting, an online meeting, with, I don't know if I can find this now. The person that is leading up I want to call it MUSC Entryway Program. I've got to go open my email, folks. Bear with me 1 second while I go find this. Okay. I'm a group of us from our board, hopefully will be available. Everybody will be available, but we are going to be talking with Sarah Bourne. She's the program coordinator in the Addiction Sciences Division at MUSC. She's been kind of talking with our deputy director, Kristen, recently, and Kristen suggested that we have this sort of meeting that we all kind of chat and meet each other. And I'm going to fess up to y'all here real quick. What sort of instigated this was the program at MUSC, and I see it pretty regularly on Facebook. MUSC promotes different marijuana-related studies and or things like that. And one of them came from the Addiction Sciences Division. And I'll go into a little bit more about this at a later time, but Kristen's involved in those sort of fields of study with her own education and research type stuff, is how the brain works and things like that. At least that's my understanding of it, but my brain works a little funny. So anyway, we have a meeting because I saw one of these ads and I trolled it with a GIF from Star Wars where, I don't know, some creature says, "It's a trap." And apparently that wasn't the right response. And it was actually quite trolly. It was quite trolly. So anyhow, between Kristen and Sarah from MUSC, they've started to talk a little bit and decided that would be a great opportunity for our board to meet her and talk a little bit about what they're doing there at MUSC in their Addiction Sciences Division and how it relates to marijuana. I'm hoping to be educated because I really went in there and, like I say, I trolled their promo, their ad, their spot, whatever. I think it was a sponsored ad, looking for people to participate in this program about reducing or stopping, cannabis use. And it wasn't like you had to stop. It was, But the question I think they asked is, do you consume cannabis? Are you interested in consuming less, or something along those lines? And I think it's compensated study. So what do? I troll them. It's a trap, and it's not a trap. And I think that's part of what they want to come on and sort of express to us, that anybody that participates in these type of programs, their information is kept confidential. It's not going to out them to law enforcement around the state or anything like that. And I can't deny that there may be some people out there that feel that they're consuming too much cannabis and they'd like to smoke a little bit or consume a little bit less. I don't want to jump conclusions on people's consumption methods. But I've had that at times, thinking I should smoke a little bit less. So it's not an uncommon question that they're asking. So I believe that the research is going to be interesting, and I believe I'll get at least a little bit of an education. It's not changing my fight toward for the civil rights and civil liberties of people to consume cannabis. But it will be educational for me, because I think it's valid research. So I can't. What's the word I'm looking for? I shouldn't have trolled it and disrespected it in that manner. But now that this meeting's coming about, I'm kind of glad I did, because it's started a new conversation. And we may be able to bring you some of that here onto the program in the next down the road. I don't want to jump to any conclusions on how quickly we might get something together. All right. So there is that. That's kind of exciting, if you ask me. And yeah, this is, let me see if I read this correctly, MUSC's Youth Collaborative. So they are kind of looking at, I think, younger consumers, and I could possibly see them maybe consuming more than they would want to keep a good, clear mind for school. For Yeah, I don't advocate that young people consume unless it's under the direction of uh, their medical advisors, but sometimes it happens. So anyhow, I wanted to bring that up because I thought that was kind of interesting. And it kind of leads to what I wanted to talk about a little bit tonight anyway. I don't know where I saw it recently, but I saw another one of those stories about cannabis and psychosis, and how it, triggers it, or you're a higher rate. But what I did happen to find, and I'm going to share this with you real quick, just so if you want to go and look at it yourself a little bit, you may. I'm just going to go to window. This one. Okay. So, as you know, quite often I go to NORML.org and kind of pick up some stuff to talk about there. And right up on the top, kind of what do I call this? Push pinned up to the top, pinned up to the top. There's a article that talks about it's an op-ed, so it's an opinion piece. NORML op-ed concerns concerns surrounding cannabis and mental health must be placed in context, not sensationalized. And for some reason, I keep thinking that whatever story I happen to read happened to come out from a fellow that I believe his name is Kevin Sabat. He is with SAM, which is Smart Approaches to Marijuana. If you've ever heard of that organization, they are not a pro-legalization organization. They kind of, well, you can see right here, they want to prevent the next big tobacco. So they are not, and they, I believe, what brought some of it up is I think they share some of these or sensationalize some of these stories. So as I was always often taught when I was younger, consider the source. When you're getting some information, consider the source. Did it come from an organization that's really an anti-cannabis organization? Sam is not, in this case, is not your friend. Oh, I don't need to share that email with y'all. But here is the article. I'll go back to the op-ed. If you click in here, you'll go over to what I have now as my next tab, which is that story. In that story, it talks about concerns, and that pops open this National Institute of Health document from May 4th. So this is just a couple of weeks old, not very old at all. It talks about a study that was done in Denmark. Let me see if I get this right. Young men with cannabis use disorder may have an increased risk of developing schizophrenia, according to a study led by researchers at the Mental Health Services in the capital region of Denmark and the National Institute on Drug Abuse at the National Institutes of Health. So NIDA and the NIH, if you've ever been on conversations with me talking about those government organizations, those government entities, they are there to build propaganda, in my opinion. So anyway, the study that they're talking about was published in Psychological Medicine, analyzed some detailed health records that spanned a 5-decade period representing more than 6 million people in Denmark, to estimate the fraction of schizophrenia cases that could be attributed to cannabis use disorder on the population level. So This is the headline: Young man at highest risk of schizophrenia. Um, if you go back to the op-ed itself, this was published in the Marijuana Moment. Um, so you can find it there as well, or here on NORML's website. This was by Paul Armentado, our deputy director at National. And as he says, must be placed in context. The surrounding concerns surrounding cannabis and mental health must be placed in context, not sensationalized. Um, and that's exactly what that article on at the National Institute of Health is doing. Is it's sensationalizing that headline, if you ask me, um, and not placing it in context. The story goes on to talk about, the claims as early as the 1930s about the incurable insanity that cannabis users uh, got from consuming cannabis. Just reference Reefer Madness movies and that kind of stuff. Um, as it mentions down here, today's warnings are less sensational, but nonetheless gaining mainstream media attention. As in the 1930s, those pushing this narrative are seeking to renew crackdown on the plant, particularly in state legal markets. But is there any merit to the claims that today's cannabis use poses unique harms to one's mental health, particularly with respect to increasing one's risk of suffering from a psychotic break? Fortunately, several studies published within the past few months shed some much needed light on the subject. So again, I'm going to invite you to go and read this kind of word for word if you're interested in the subject. But I will kind of touch up base on some of these studies that came out in the past couple months. In reality, acute cannabis-induced psychosis is rare, and those who experience it are typically either predisposed to psychosis or have a pre-existing psychiatric disorder. For example, Canadian researchers recently assessed mental or behavioral-related hospitalizations among a cohort of more than 23,000 medical cannabis patients. During the course of the study, only 26 subjects were hospitalized for exhibiting disorders due to the use of cannabis, quote unquote, disorders. Um, European data tells a similar story on a study published in September in the journal Transitional Psychiatry. I just pronounced that wrong, didn't I? Translational Psychiatry. An international team of scientists assessed incidences of cannabis-associated psychotic patterns in a cohort of 230,000 consumers. They determined that fewer than 0.5% of them ever had experienced symptoms requiring medical intervention, a rate that's similar to that associated with alcohol, and that most of those who did so had been previously diagnosed with either bipolar disorder or psychosis. So cannabis use is not increasing those numbers according to these studies. So does some data from Canada, which legalized cannabis for adult use in 2018. In the ensuing years, investigators have failed to identify any, quote, evidence of significant changes in cannabis-induced psychosis or schizophrenia in emergency department presentations, unquote, according to a study published recently in the Canadian Journal of Psychiatry. I could go on and talk about more of them, but again, this sort of goes back to that consider the source when you're reading some of these articles, and they're sensationalizing things like, oh, young men are highest at risk. That may be true, but it doesn't mean they're any more at risk than many other groups that may not be cannabis consumers, and the risk may not, and probably, in my opinion, is not cannabis related. Don't take my opinion for it. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. I am not a psychiatrist or psychologist. So take that all with a grain of salt. I could go on. He's got a couple of other studies that they've talked about here. I got a kick out of this one where they studied a cohort of 240 pairs of identical twins that lived in different jurisdictions. One lived in a legal area, one lived in a not legal area. I don't know why I think that's so funny, but I thought that was funny. First off, tracking down the legal twins that don't that live in two different jurisdictions. Um, so now I do want to kind of bring up, as they bring up down here toward one of these later paragraphs. This is not to deny that some people with psychiatric disorders consume cannabis. Prime example. And it was well established that those suffering from psychosis and similar symptoms tend to consume all controlled substances at rates higher than those of the general population, or that in some cases, cannabis use may exacerbate symptoms of psychosis or even trigger a psychotic episode. Like other psychotropic substances, cannabis is not innocuous. And as we've probably talked about on this conversation before, many of y'all know, cannabis affects different people differently. That's why, especially when we're talking about people that are new consumers, start low, start slow. Be very cautious. Get used to how it affects you, or you get familiar, or find a different strain that may affect you a little bit differently. But always start low, start slow. So, in some instances, there are higher risk populations that may possess a greater likelihood of experiencing adverse events following its use. Those who suffer from certain psychiatric disorders or who are predisposed to such events likely fall into this category. But sensationalizing the potential risk of cannabis will do little to protect them. Calling for the recriminalization of cannabis in state legal markets won't either. Thank you, Paul. Rather, the establishment of a regulated market designed to keep cannabis products away from young people and that provides clear warnings to those specific populations who may be more vulnerable to its effects, coupled with a policy of consumer education, is the best way to protect public health and mitigate consumers' risks. So, and as it says here, this op-ed was originally published in Marijuana Moment. So, and again, I am not what I would call a scholar on this, but I definitely believe to protect the rights of citizenry, that is the best aspect. Don't recriminalize in states that have legalized if you're worried about these concerns. Rather establish the regulated markets, keeping it away from people that may be at risk. Excuse me. Let me go ahead and stop my screen share for a moment. And that's kind of what I got tonight, or what I was looking to talk about tonight. I found that kind of interesting because this schizophrenia story kind of rears its ugly head on a bit of a cycle. Comes back every now and again. Again, this was just a relatively newly published article, May 4th. So every now and again we'll get some posting, and they kind of run away with the try and sensationalize it and try and make cannabis look bad, going back to their reefer madness roots with the propaganda. Again, I will take everything and anything coming out of the National Institute of Health news releases, as this is, or off their website or whatever. I would take all of it and be suspect of its validity. A government is good at their propaganda machines, my friends. All right, let me go ahead and close up a couple of tabs over on my other window that I don't need. Got that email. And half hour in. What the heck? Maybe I'll take a moment, see if I have anybody left on the call here to do a quick trivia question. Been a while since we've done a trivia question, and we are still looking for sponsors for our trivia segments. So if you want to promote your business, reach out to us and sponsor a trivia segment. Um, I don't know if I read those ones before or not, so I'm just going to leave them go and do a new one. All right, new. I know this one, doesn't everybody? I like it though. Category Unjust Bust. It is a 30-pointer. And as many of you know, we've sort of changed up our format. We're going to ask the question. We're going to give you a minute to put in your comments, your thoughts in the comment section, and then we're going to answer it pretty much right away. Unjust Bust is the category. 30-point question if you're keeping score. What LSD guru was arrested for marijuana possession and sentenced to 30 years in prison in the 1970s? Was it Timothy Leary, Hunter S. Thompson, Abby Hoffman, or Ken Casey? Again, what LSD guru was arrested for marijuana possession and sentenced to 30 years in prison in the 1970s? Was it Timothy Leary, Hunter S. Thompson, Abby Hoffman, Ken Casey? All right. If you happen to know the answer, or you think you know the answer, or you want to guess, go ahead and leave it there in the comments, and we'll take a peek at those in just a moment. Again, I will just mention here that we're looking for ways to, again, keep us operational, keep us functional. We had some great fundraisers through April that are going to help us do some other coming events, which we'll talk about soon. But we've also tried to start implementing some sponsorship opportunities for businesses throughout the state, whether they're cannabis related or not, to get us to mention their businesses on our podcast. So we would do that right about now. Anyway, let's get back to it. We'll give you the answer to that question. I do not see any answers in our comment section at the moment. And we are hooked into all three of our live streams. Okay. Unjust Bust is the category. 30-point on the board if you're keeping score for this question. What LSD guru was arrested for marijuana possession and sentenced to 30 years in prison in the 1970s? Was it Timothy Leary, Hunter S. Thompson, Abby Hoffman, or Ken Casey? And the answer to that question is Timothy Leary. I want to set this question to the side for myself and come back and take a look at that a little bit, because it's my understanding that Timothy Leary got arrested for simple possession of cannabis in the 60s, fought it all the way to the Supreme Court, overturned the 1937 Stamp Act, basically doing away with the prohibition of cannabis and causing the basically the government to scramble, the president at the time, Nixon, and the Congress to scramble and come up with the Controlled Substances Act, which isn't actually the name of it. I'd have to go back and look at that. And this is in the 70s, so I'll have to see if they arrested him again out of retaliation, most probably. If you know anything about that one, let me know. If not, that card's sitting there, and I'm going to snoop into it a little bit. I find that interesting, especially as an old LSD fan from the 70s. All right. Question for the night, or one of the questions. We may get one more in here in just a little bit. I think what I will do, because I don't have a whole lot of other subject that I want to talk about this week. I do see one thing on NORML's website I almost want to make a quick comment on. If any of you regularly follow the State Policy Weekly updates on National's YouTube channel, or I think they also stream it to Facebook. Jax James has been the state policy advisor for I want to say over a year now, and also the director of Texas NORML. But since she came on board as state policy advisor at National, I believe she's playing a bit more of a reduced role at Texas NORML, and she just announced to us at a chapter to the chapters recently that she has accepted another position, will be leaving as the state policy advisor at National. And be quite honest with you, Jax has done a great job of what she does there at National as the state policy manager. She kind of keeps an eye on what's going on all 50 states. I have enough trouble kind of watching what's going on here in South Carolina and then at the federal level. She kind of she stays on top of what's going on in every single state. And then on top of that, if you go to National's site, you'll see the action, the action alerts out there. If there's not somebody like myself at the state level creating those, and some states don't have a chapter, and some states that do have chapters, their staff doesn't really know how to use that action alert system. She'll go in and create them for each and every one of those states, and multiple legislation within those states. So she's done a great job. I think they're gonna be hard pressed to find somebody to take that position and run it as efficiently as well as she's done. I almost wish we had some of that same, regular update in print kind of thing, or even as a video. And they did them, I think, as both. I think there was like an email, and I think there was also like a YouTube podcast about state policy stuff each week. And I'd love to see some of that on federal, just because federal, we don't have any kind of like documented media to go back and look at and reference. We have our meetings pretty regularly, like every other week. We'll talk about what's going on at federal level, but it is not like documented. We don't record it. It's not, broken down as an email. So it's whatever kind of notes I kind of scribble down. And as a lot of you know, not a lot going on right now at federal level. We're waiting for more legislation to be proposed. There was some flurry of activity with the Safe Banking Act this past week. Or was that the week before? And let me see if I can find anything on that real quick. I'm not seeing it. May 10th, call your senators to advance cannabis banking. But yeah, we had, of course, I don't think it made it anywhere. All right. The other thing I wanted to kind of talk about, and I touched on it briefly last week, was the success of our April events. Sorry, I'm just getting a little tired here. Of our April events, as I mentioned before, we actually had 2 420 events. We had a 418 fundraiser. We had 2 month-long fundraisers. We learned some things on maybe how to do things better. But again, we did a lot more than we have done in the past. Because I want to say, because we've got a pretty good, reliable board at this point. They've helped me kind of put some of this stuff together. We split up our team, and 2 of us went to one event on 420, and 2 of us, hosted another. And turnouts were acceptable. I get these like delusions of grandeur sometimes. I think we're gonna have these huge turnouts, um, and it doesn't always quite happen that way. But things went well. Things went well, and we've got some other things that we're looking forward down the road. As I mentioned, we're going to be in a conversation later this week with MUSC. See what we can bring to the conversation about some of the research that they're doing. Hopefully, it's not all anti or I'm jumping to conclusions, but hopefully we get some interesting conversations going out of that. The other thing is we are in, excuse me, I want to say early planning stages, but we're about 2 months out from our planned beach sweep and day at the beach on Folly Beach. If you like the beach and you want to also help the earth and clean up some trash, we invite you out to that. We have posted some info about it on our Facebook page events section. I think there's a note of it on our website, but I have to update our coming events section on that. I have a online, I think I have a phone meeting tomorrow with a representative of one of the local beach sweep representatives, and I'm not sure if they're with the Turtle Watch group or who they're with, but we are in conversations with them, and I will find out. Actually, that was one of my couple questions to them when they said, let's just talk on the phone, what organization they're representing so that we can give proper credit to where I don't know if they're part of the aquarium or their own group or don't know. Oh, I just took notice on banner here. I never turned off the agenda thing. And I see that we have Taco Tuesday 420 with us. Love the picture. Cool. So yes, we have a planned date. It's going to be July 23rd. It's a Sunday. Let me look. I didn't put it on my calendar yet, but it's Sunday, July 23rd. Rain or shine, especially for the beach sweep portion of it. And so we're crossing our fingers. It's one thing I've always been apprehensive about doing outdoor weather dependent events. But people plan trips to the beach all the time, and sometimes weather gets in the way. And some of y'all locals may know the story of the Folly bubble. Apparently, bad weather goes around Folly Beach quite often, unless you're a hurricane. But mark your calendars for July 23rd. That is a Sunday morning. And we are planning the beach sweep portion itself to start at 9 a.m. I don't know how many of the folks on the call at the moment or who are going to be watching this later are regular beach goers. But the traffic to the beach on a weekend when the weather's nice can be pretty backed up, starting as early as 10:30, and then start backing up further and further from there. So my way to sort of combat that is get there early. Go down there, be there by 8:45, be on the beach at 9 o'clock, picking up some trash, saving some turtles from some garbage. Who knows what we're going to be, finding in there. My wife and I quite often go down to Folly and we like to go shark tooth hunting. But general, our trash bag comes back fuller than our shark tooth bag. So, I am in touch with, like I say, someone down there. I believe they're part of one of the Turtle Watch programs. I'll get more details on that organization for you later. Taco Tuesday 420 says 3rd Street East. That's where we plan on meeting. Is going to be at 3rd Street East. Not far from Birch Market, if you're familiar with where Birch is on 3rd Street in Folly Beach. So that's going to be exciting. And that is July. We also have some events coming up starting in June. I believe it's 2 dates in June, one in July, one in August. Is going to be the James Island County Park Reggae Nights. These go on a Friday night. I believe the first one is June 2nd. I have my personal calendar up, and I don't. Oh, I do have Reggae in the Park marked on there. And I've requested off those nights from work because I work at the park. So I have requested off. I think I've even been granted off on those particular nights. So in June, Friday the 2nd and Friday the 23rd are the 2 dates. I believe there's one in August, what's going to fall. I'm sorry, June, July, and August I don't have marked on my calendar yet, but I believe the July one is going to be like the 7th. Anyway, they are listed on our website. Those dates are listed on our website on our coming events page. So keep that in mind. There are ticket fees for that event. I believe it's $10 per person in advance, $15 day of event or at the gate. If you are a Park Gold Pass member, and this is a reason to buy one of those, you get your carload in for free. I believe up to 15 people vehicle, minivan. I mean, not minivan, like a larger van, mini bus. If you're coming to just one of those, maybe the $10 ticket is better. But if you're in Charleston County and you use the park system anyway, definitely advise you to get one of those gold passes because it gets you into some of these other events at no additional charge. Not only that, does not just get you in, but it gets whoever's in your car in with you. So very economical way to participate in some of these things. Like I say, there are I believe 4 of these events at $10 per person. That's $40 per person just to go in there. If you deduct that $40 from the price of your gold pass, which I don't know, I think they're around $80. You've already paid for half of it. And that, I think, gets in at least once for the Festival of Lights that they have at the holiday season. That's another savings of probably like $30. So anyway, something like that. We are going to be there. We are not sponsors. We are not vendors. And our opinions are our own and not necessarily that of the Charleston County Park System. So, but we invite you to come out, wear your cannabis merch with pride, your NORML shirt with your working to reform marijuana laws on the back if you have one. Wear that out. See if we can start some conversations. We just want to kind of show up at these things and be, as many of you say to me, normalize cannabis in our everyday lives, normalize cannabis in our events. I did not see them as a sponsor or as a vendor this year, but I know last year the Charleston Hemp Company was at all of the events. I don't know if they're not there because they had hemp flower available and it smelled like hemp flower. So I don't know if that's the reasoning or not. But I didn't see them there as a vendor this year, which sort of disappoints me. It may just be a business decision on their part. I have no idea. But that is another thing we kind of have lined up. So we have some stuff going on, not here in May, but June. Start with reggae nights. July, we'll have a reggae night. We'll have a beach sweep. We'll have a day at the beach. August, we know we've got one reggae night in there. And discussion is on for a picnic. I'm thinking September, maybe October. Talking North Charleston area, probably Wanamaker Park. haven't worked out the details yet, but my kind of plan is that South Carolina NORML will cover the hot dogs and the burgers and the buns and ketchup mustard kind of thing, and that people bring a covered dish and bring a little bit of something to share as a side dish. Again, that is at one of the county parks in Charleston, so there's probably a fee to get in of $2 to get into the park, or if you have your gold pass, there you go again, save another couple bucks. Sorry, I don't mean to make it sound like a commercial for the county park system, but and let me just kind of double check our time. Oh my goodness, I did talk another 20 minutes. I told you I could talk without my brain engaged. That is kind of what we've got as far as coming events. As you also know, this is not an election cycle year, so there's not really going to be a whole lot going on. I mean, there might be some small elections in different municipalities throughout the state, but we are looking more towards next year. And as you know, next year, 2024 election is a presidential election year, and they've moved the South Carolina's primary to be one of the first primaries instead of one of the last primaries. It's going to be an interesting election cycle. So, but yeah, we don't have some of the ramp up that we would from now through the summer, starting to sort of talk about. Well, actually, we would have already been talking about primaries had we been doing them in May this year, and our smoke the vote stuff. Top of mind only because I was talking to another activist from North Carolina, and we're talking about the upkeep on the smoke the vote data and trying to keep track of the legislators that actually support, or as his comment was, he's got a list he's trying to track Republican legislators that support cannabis law reform. And I said, that sounds like that would be a very good list to have. All righty. And we got a howdy from Nancy. Hello, or howdy, Nancy. Great seeing you here tonight. Kind of coming in on tail end as I'm getting ready to do some of my closeout stuff, I hate to say. But I have been rambling on for just about an hour, most of it with, as I've said before, brain disengaged. I want to jump back just a little bit to what we were talking about early on with VP. I have asked her to also take on one other role at this point if she's going to be stepping down from, I don't want to say stepping down, but not being as regular participant alive, would be to also keep it more interesting for y'all to have her sort of feed me a little bit of topical information from time to time. She seems to have come across some pretty interesting articles between her and her husband. They've got given us some good content over the past few months. So my hopes on all that is that things will settle out. We can get VP back on here on a somewhat regular basis, and otherwise, at the moment, guys, you're stuck with me. But that's how it's been for how long? We've been good with it. 7:54. I'm going to call it. I'm going to go hit the couch. Like I said, I've been working way too much. I'm kind of in pain. I've got plantar fasciitis kicking up in my left foot. So I'm going to go rest. Oh, yeah, guys, ever use a shiatsu machine? It kind of like massages your back. Works on your feet. It works on your legs. It helps. I'm going to probably go put my foot up on that thing for a while. With that said, we have another hey to everyone from Jennifer. Again, hey, Jennifer. I do want to kind of call it for the night. Don't forget, as always, kind of keep an eye on our Facebook page. I do a little bit more posting there than our other social media. I try to get out on the others a little bit more often than I used to, but I'm still not real good at it. And don't forget to, again, go ahead and subscribe and hit that notification bell on YouTube just to make sure that you know when these podcasts are coming up. Or sometimes we even do real quick live videos every now and again from here. Beyond that, I expect to be back here as usual. Love it. As usual, every Wednesday. Thank you, Joey. I am going to rest and elevate that foot and medicate the pain away as best as I can. Um, Healing. It's a process. All right. Thank you all again for joining me. As always, I love having you here and talking about cannabis. We will be back again next week. Hopefully, I get a little bit more interesting topics to cover. Um, if you have any thoughts on stuff you'd like to hear about, don't forget to reach out, shoot me an email, or contact me through our contact page on our website at scnormal.org. That's it. Gonna say goodnight. Peace out.